What's going on, everyone? So let's talk about Fatima and the changes she is clearly going through, especially after episode 4. For obvious reasons, can't really show you what happened, but if you saw that episode, then you know what happened. So diving right into it, getting right to it. She essentially looks like she's going from vegetables to people, right? She has this insatiation of, hey, I need rotten vegetables, decaying vegetables, right? Now people that are dead, she is digging into and tasting their blood. This really does feel like she is either herself is turning or the baby inside of her is causing her these sensations, causing her this hunger. I think that there is a real possibility that it's her and not really the baby. So, like, one thing that keeps being a trend, right, in this season in particular, and just the show, period, it's what I try to follow, are the trends, is somebody good dies, good things happen, right? TN dies, food shortage, boom, now you have plenty of food for the town. Well, what happens when you kill one of the monsters? What happens when Smiley dies? When a bad dies, does something bad happen? Right? In many ways, this feels like it's an eye for an eye. In many ways, it feels like this is something where it's like, okay, you took one of ours, we're going to take one of yours. And we know that from Christy, and even one of the monsters were laying, that they used to be human and were kind of turned and changed into these, creatures that have this sensation for humans, right? And eating humans, and particularly the insides, because they always leave the bodies behind. And you're seeing Fatima kind of have these changes herself, kind of going through these changes herself, which I think is really interesting. Curious to see how far are they going to go with this. Is it going to get to the point where she ends up start killing people, start taking people out in order to, quench her thirst? Something to kind of keep in mind. But when she was going through the whole process, I really thought that Ellis was going to come in. I really wanted that to happen. I want to see, like, how would Ellis respond? Right? Like, and look, maybe it picks up, and maybe he does, right? It's a very real possibility that episode 5 picks up, right? Based on how it ended at the end of episode 4, it's very possible and very likely that it's going to pick up same thing that night, and maybe Ellis does come in and catch Fatima, tasting the blood. How far is Fatima going to go on Nikki and her body? That I think is interesting. And I watched the episode a couple times now, and I was trying to see if there was any, like, signs or signals that Fatima was going to do that. One, they didn't really show her face very often during that sequence while she was helping, because she was in the thick of it helping. So I think that was deliberate, but I didn't catch or see anything in particular that gave signs. If you notice something, please let me know. I'd love to hear it down in the comments. But yeah, I really was, like, looking out, particularly in this scene on the second watch around, because I always like to watch it first as a fan, kind of just enjoy the episode. Then I do the live stream after, and just kind of have that fun conversation. But then after, I really try to watch it, a second and third time if I need to really kind of overanalyze and break down each scene in particular, take notes, so on and so forth, so that way I can make these videos. And I really didn't notice anything, which I think is very interesting. They didn't give any subtleties. I think that they really wanted the shock factor. But to me, I want to see, like, what happens with Ellis? Does Ellis, if he catches Fatima, does he tell his dad? Does he tell anybody? Does he keep it to himself and try to keep her at bay? Right? Does he kind of try to keep the monster on a leash, so to speak? Right? Like, how does it play out? How do they go about it as a couple? Does it cause a rift? Does it break Ellis? Right? Does he kind of go into protective mode, and does he go and take her and go into isolation? Do the towns put her in isolation? Maybe, like with the little village, right? You have that little colony that everyone's staying at, right? Well, not everybody, but you have Kenny and Jade and Christy, they're staying at that little colony. What if that's where they end up going to kind of isolate and get away, right? I don't know. I think it would be such an interesting dynamic to see what Ellis and how he responds and deals with it. Is he like kind of like, you're a monster, right? Like, because there are so many ways that they could go about it. My guess is that he at first tries to keep her at bay, and then she gets too out of control and he can't. And either he meets his end or he's got to find a way to kill her at some point, right? Kind of have this scorn love story where it's just like, he has to do the right thing, as did Boyd, right? When Boyd had to take out Ellis's mom and his wife. But nonetheless, right? Like, you're seeing the progression. You're seeing the changes in real time. You're seeing the evolution of Fatima. Her going from, not eating at all to trying to find that thing that can kind of satisfy her, to going to vegetables, right? All the crops go rotten, all the crops go bad. And one of my questions when I made a video diving into that a while back was like, what happens when that dries up? What happens when that goes away? Said, and suggested and, had conversations about how, like, what if it is people, right? What if that's what's next? And so now you're starting to see her taking that next step, taking that next leap. But how far is she going to go, right? Does she go so far to start essentially sacrificing people? Do the monsters at some point? Does she work with the monsters at some point? Right? Like, think about that. What if she goes out at night and the monsters don't attack her because she's turning into one? And they help her, right? Like, get her first kill. What if she takes out one of the townspeople and then the monsters sit there and help her feast, help her eat? There's a lot of ways that they could go about this. I think that would be a very interesting dynamic where, maybe she goes in, she's dealing with the struggles of, like, the thirst, the hunger, right? She doesn't want to kill anybody. So maybe somebody's out that shouldn't be out, and she notices, and so she goes and is like, well, they were going to die anyway. Kind of get to the justification. Or maybe the monsters track her down and then she goes, or maybe one of the monsters go and talk to her and approach her, right? If she's like standing next to a window or by a window, it's very possible that maybe the monsters tell her, like, hey, we're not going to kill you. We just want to help you, right? You need to eat, don't you? We got this person over here that's just waiting, that we're going to eat either way. So either you can have them or we're going to eat them. What would you prefer? Kind of work. She kind of goes, okay, fine. She goes out there. She goes to go feast. And now you start seeing the next steps in her evolution. I think that could be a very interesting kind of approach and direction that they could go. Because again, you're seeing the growth of her transformation, right? Like, you're seeing her start to evolve. Maybe even too, like, a lot of people have thrown out, like, is that spirit that Elgin keeps seeing, is it Fatima? I don't think it is. I think it's just, because this show is really based on folklore and, various mythologies and stuff. And yes, it has similarities to her, but particularly like the nose, like you look at the nose is very different. I don't think this is her. I think that this is just a spirit that is supposed to be kind of, it's warning Elgin of like, hey, and I think it's warning, like, Elgin needs to help, right? Keeps saying help, and he keeps getting all scared and running away, and it's like, listen to the spirit, see what it has to say. I do think that there is going to be this boiling point between Elgin and Fatima at some point, but look, it's very possible she's turning into a monster herself. And maybe she's going to start going through a transformation the more that she eats, the more that she feasts on humans. Maybe that's the evolution. Maybe that's the change, right? Because if these monsters were once human, they had to go through a metamorphosis at some point. And what was that, right? Maybe that's what this is. Maybe, you kind of get possessed by a monster or impregnated by a monster or whatever, and then that monster changes you and you know, kind of causes you, maybe you have this window where if you can kind of calm the hunger, then you can survive. Otherwise, you full-fledged become a monster and then eventually lose yourself, as we've seen. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. But as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? What are your takeaways on what's going on with Fatima? What did you think of that scene? What do you think of what appears to be a transformation? What do you think is happening in her? Do you think it's the baby? Do you think it's Fatima herself? Do you think she's just turning into this monster? Do you think that eventually it'll all work out? She'll be fine, right? Where it's something, maybe they'll do a ritual or they'll do something in order to kind of save her. You know, there's a million different paths that they could go. But I'd love to kind of hear some of your ideas and your thoughts down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.